Ben Garrett from the Ole Miss Spirit. This is for both Keith and Lane. In the process, you mentioned you went looking for a particular type of coach, one that excited the Ole Miss fan base. And that, what did you find in Lane? And Lane, what was kind of the discussions with Keith? What was your? Did y'all know each other beforehand? What was that like in that process together, talking and getting to know each other, trust each other?
Well, no, we did not know each other before. I was able to get on the phone with Lane kind of middle of the week and had a great conversation and talked about some really good things. And obviously, knowing him from afar, he checked the boxes on a lot of what we had talked about, what we wanted to bring to Ole Miss. But obviously, you got to build a personal relationship with somebody. So we got on the phone, had a great conversation, and then was able to go down and spend about 2.5, 3 hours with him face to face. Talked about a lot of different things: football, life, philosophy, vision, all those things. And I think after I left that meeting, I felt very comfortable that we were going to align on a lot of things, and we were able to get it done.
Yeah, I think, you guys mentioned we did not know each other. As this started coming about, you obviously research the job just like they research you, and a big thing is who you work for. And so I was really excited once I found out his background as a great player, not just as a great player, but a great player here especially. So, when you bring recruits to a place and you're able to bring them to your athletic director and they can sell the place, not just from having been here as an athletic director, but being there as a student athlete, and then, really visiting with him and how his passion for winning here and getting everyone aligned here the right way and doing this thing together.
David Johnson for 24/7 Sports and Ole Miss Spirit. Lane, can you kind of just walk us through what your process is going to be on filling out your staff, where you're at with that right now, and what the coming days may look like?
Sure. We've been in a lot of work on that, trying to figure it out, and so we'll bring a great staff here. My agents Jimmy Sexton and Ed Manowitz are here, and they've been able to help me a lot through this process. I forgot to thank them out there, so that's why I threw that plug in there. And so we have 2 coaches we brought with us: our strength coach Wilson Love, and assistant coach Kevin Smith, and then we'll figure it out. We'll interview the guys that are here, and potentially keep some of them too.
Harris Hall for Daily Journal, Tupelo. Lane, you touched on this a little bit out there, but how do you feel like you are different since USC in terms of off the field, maturity, that sort of thing?
Well, that's a very fair question. That when you go through obstacles, that sometimes seem like, really bad things. There's a book, Obstacles the Way by Ryan Holiday, and he sent me that book, and that book really kind of put things in a different light to me. You can have something like the firing of USC that you feel at the time is the end of the world when it happens, and are you ever going to get a head coaching job again? And you go through, we're on sanctions, all that stuff that you go through. And then, I look at that differently now and say, hey, you know what? Had that not happened, I would have never went to go work for Nick Saban. So that obstacle, really helped me develop. And so I think going to work with Coach was great from XOs, all that stuff, but really from how he manages the program from top to bottom. And I mentioned it in there. I feel like, I was a head coach before, back to like USC, and I was really the offensive coordinator being the head coach, and developing players, getting them to the NFL and getting a lot of players drafted. And then I really kind of changed and really realized, okay, there's more to it than this. That's not my calling. God's calling for me wasn't just to get guys drafted and make a bunch of money. It was to develop them off the field and have relationship with them and help them through things. So I feel like there's a lot different that way in player relationship this time around. And I'm not saying today. This has been for the last 3 years as a head coach. I would like to think those players would say that.
Us with the Mississippi Clarion Ledger. What made now the right time for you to want to make the jump back into Power 5 to the SEC, and what made Ole Miss the attractive choice over some of the other schools that might have courted you in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about other schools today. Obviously, today's about Ole Miss. And, it always, I remember losing here at Alabama, and like I said, we lost 2 regular season games in 3 years, both to the same team. And, my brother Chris was here, and so I also spent part of a summer here with the family at Chris's house and went around and saw the areas and the people and said, that's a special place. That's a really neat place to live. And you can win there because I saw it. No one else was beating us. And so I always kind of said, that's a premier job that at times has performed like that and then times hasn't. That's partly why we're here today. So it's our job to bring it back to where it's been before and sustain. One thing he said that I really liked was, the program's done well at times, but then all of a sudden it'll go from 9 or 10 to 4 or 5 wins, and have those jumps. And so if we, when we nail this thing recruiting-wise from top to bottom in our classes and not just, some stars at the top so our ranking's big, then, and we develop the bottom of the roster, then we avoid those type of swings.
Lane, Brian Rippey, Super Talk Mississippi. I know it's early, but what were your initial impressions of the roster that you'll be inheriting?
Yeah, I looked at it a little bit. Obviously, we were playing a game, so it's not like I, studied it from a personnel standpoint. It was really more talking to people that knew, around the league, and a lot of, they had a lot of excitement, over these last 2 classes, especially the last one, and so, that made it very attractive.
Stephen Gagliano, News Mississippi. With the early signing period coming up, how important is it to kind of hit the ground running?
Yeah, we're going from here. I believe we're going somewhere. So they gave me a schedule. I didn't know what it was, but actually last night, had a meeting with a recruit last night, and then I think 8 o'clock or something last night, and then had another one starting at 6:30 a.m. today. So you don't win in this conference just by being a good coach. You win in this conference by having really good assistants to get really good players. There's too much talent in this conference to just, think coaching alone does that.
Lane, Neil McCready with Rivals.com. You were always considered an elite recruiter, but what did you learn about recruiting as a philosophy for a team in your 3 years with Coach Saban at Alabama?
I think more the NFL model as far as, the evaluation, extremely thorough evaluations on kids. A lot of, people, from the head coach to the coordinator, position coach, like all evaluating, a grading system. Before, and we recruited great at USC, as assistant with Coach Carroll, and then our first year there, even with the sanction, we signed the #1 class in the country. I think at one point, it was, since it had been Alabama had been on a run, that had been the last team. So, but there I felt like it was more, okay, we just want these guys, and we don't want these guys. And this now is, our system's a lot more like an NFL team. And I think now in college football more than ever, it really is like an NFL team, because now you have what? High school, junior college kids, transfer kids, grad transfer kids, guys leaving your program. So there's basically like free agency in there, and you got to figure out how you're going to manage that, and which ones you're going to take. It didn't used to be like that. There were hardly any transfers. So it used to just be, okay, take high school kids, and the only decision was, do you take some junior college kids? So I think it's extremely important to, we talked about before, avoid doing this.
Lane, Nate Gabler with the Oxford Eagle. It's been a lot of 2 and 3 year stints with you over the last decade place. What do you see Ole Miss as kind of a long-term job, and what about Ole Miss kind of makes you feel that way? So.
Yes.
You didn't see how big my buyout was yet, did you? So that's a very fair question. Now, obviously, Alabama, we were assistant coach, so you got to move. And so Florida Atlantic was a very exciting place. It was not one of those that I was just leaving to leave, even just to go to the SEC. It wasn't that. It had to be a place that really felt things were aligned in order to be somewhere that you can really win. And so I have zero reason to leave here because what? You're in the best conference that there is in football. You got great leadership, and you got the ability to recruit great players, and you have an awesome fan base. I saw that firsthand when I was about getting run over after that game. When that game ended here in that exciting game, and the fans stormed the field.
Have you met with the team yet? And if not, what's kind of the message you're going to say to those guys to keep some of them here, to kind of get them energized for?
Yeah, I believe that's our next step here in the next hour or two, I think. A lot of the same things we said in the press conference, just, talking about open competition. Everyone's got a clean slate, whether you're, great play, whether you've been a great player here or you haven't played at all. So, and just motivate them. And the good thing I think is, not to sound arrogant, but I think they know who we are. They know players we've coached, championships and stuff. So that usually makes it a lot easier when you come in and they've already known you've done it, and they know players you've coached. And so they say, the receiver says, oh, oh, I remember you coaching Amari Cooper, and him winning the Blitnikoff. And so, or you're a running back and they say, oh, I saw what you did with Derrick Henry and Reggie Bush and 2 Heismans. So we got a lot of really good things to sell that we have proof of. So we're not saying, hey, this is what it's going to look like, but we haven't done it before.
Lane, there are some who had chosen to enter the transfer portal. Do you welcome those into these discussions?
Sure. I mean, we're going to look at everything. Everything's a clean slate. I'm not going to get into names, but had a kid today, just when I was, walking around the field today, come up to me and he entered the portal, I guess earlier in the season, and came up and said, hey, I was leaving because I felt like wasn't getting developed and wasn't, the right type of offense for me. But he said, I've never met you, but I know what you've done, and so I'm taking my name out of the portal if you'll have me back.
Kiffin, you guys talked about analysts, recruiting office personnel, beefing up all that stuff to compete with the LSUs and the Alabamas.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't spoken specifics. Obviously, Coach Kiffin will lead that charge. I think what we did with the assistant pool and the staff pool is very competitive, and we'll give him an opportunity to work at the very highest level. But certainly those will be his decisions, and we'll do everything we can to support.
Lane, Joe Cook, WAPT. I was wondering, you've been a head coach, of course. Talk about the reception you received from the fan base. Did you ever think you'd be kissing and hugging babies at the tarmac when you got off the plane?
A lot better than another tarmac experience that I had. I didn't think of it. It was like an anniversary or something like that. So that was really neat to see. I didn't know people were allowed on the tarmac. So, but it was pretty cool. I felt like I was in a movie. Like all of a sudden they're like closing in on you, and we're in, and like they got all the lights shining. Like they just keep closing in. I'm like, all right, where are we going here? Like, and so like, just get out. It'll be okay. I'm like, okay. And it was awesome. The reception was great, and it was really neat. You could feel the energy, and from my understanding, it's not real easy to find parking there and stuff. And so, that was really neat and special for them to go out of their way to do that. And what I was told, basically, have a tailgate party.
Lane, David Kellum, Ole Miss Radio Network. I want to go back to your brother, Chris, and just what were your conversations with him like over the last few days to maybe solidify what he thought about the experience here was like?
Well, he was helpful for me, in discussions with him because he was here before when they won, and then he's coached with me, so he knows how I coach. And so I said, well, what do you think? He said, I think that you'll kill it there. I've been around you. I've coached for you, and where you're at and what you've learned from Coach Saban and those things. And FAU had won 3 games 3 years in a row. So those seniors had never won more than 3 games. In the first year, we won 11 games. So he was there for that, to see that. So he really excited me too. I have confidence. I know we're going to win, but he really, cemented that by some things he said.
Lane, you mentioned technology and analytics in your opening thing. Is there a staffer that you might bring in to do that sort of stuff? And what is that sort of side of the football this last decade kind of meant to you? Yeah,
nowadays you don't necessarily have to hire someone because they have a system, so you hire a company. CAI is what we've used before, and so they do a great job. We were kind of at the forefront of that, and really actually was so excited about it. Helped them get more clients because it does change the way that you think. They give you a weekly report every week of things around the country. Here's all these situations, and this is how people handle them. This is how they should have. And so, when you dive into it and you really spend hours studying it, it's not how it doesn't tell you how to coach the way that most coaches coach. The old school way, from an analytics standpoint, is extremely conservative. There's so many more times you're supposed to be going for it. You're supposed to not be kicking long field goals, and people just punt or they go kick, and they don't realize, okay, there's a 6% chance to make that field goal. But as the coach, you say, well, I put him out there and he missed it. I did what I was supposed to. Versus, a lot of coaches are afraid of the press conference afterwards, and so they do the conservative, easy thing because then you guys don't rip them. So get ready to rip me.
Trey Laundrie, WLBT, this being your 3rd stint in the conference, how have you seen, I guess, college football as a whole, but this conference specifically change or evolve?
I don't know. it was extremely competitive, 10 years ago at Tennessee. I think maybe as competitive as the conference has ever been, maybe ever. When you look at the coaches that were there and Coach Spurrier and Urban Meyer and obviously Nick Saban. I mean, it was loaded with great players. I remember saying at Tennessee, the difference was, coming from the West Coast and the Pac-12, probably, I think Pac-10 at that time probably, but it was like every week you had a nightmare matchup somewhere. There was a great defensive line, a great front seven player on every single team in the conference from top to bottom, and so it's extremely competitive. So I don't know that it's changed that much. To me, it's always been this way, and so if anything, right now maybe it's a little bit more lopsided than it was back then, where it was a little more even.
Is that what kind of draws you back here to this point, that competition?
This is the highest level. This is the highest level, the best players, the best coaches that you go against. And so if you're competitive, this is where you want to be. And had a great experience the last 3 years. And in a lot of ways, that was more special than winning national championships. When the Alabama was over, we were on, I think, a 26-game win streak and won 34 straight at USC. But the experience with those players that weren't going to go to the NFL at Florida Atlantic and they had never won, and then to give them that, that was as special as anything. But I still felt like, all right, let's go back to the highest level now that we're really prepared for this better and haven't been the places that we've been, going through those obstacles. And that's so, we're in a much better position to win and to do everything right from top to bottom and not make some of those mistakes that we made 10 years ago at Tennessee.
Well, kind of feeding off of that, Studio Today, NBC Memphis, what is the challenge in topping in Alabama? You've seen the inner workings of that program. What do you have to do to be like that?
Well, like I said, it happened here. It happened 2 times here, in 3 years. So the goal is to continue to beat people like that for an extended amount of time. And so that takes a lot of work. It doesn't happen overnight. We've got to hire a great staff. We've got to recruit great kids and kids that are going to stay. And every kid's not going to be a 5-star. We've got to develop. And that's another great thing about the experience was, we were developing no-star kids at Florida Atlantic at times. And so, because there used to be a knock on us, well, everywhere we went, we always had the best players because we'd always have the top recruiting class wherever we were. So I think that helps us a lot because, as we know, they're not going to all be 5-stars. So developing the bottom of the roster so they can be productive and help us play, versus where maybe 10 years ago your head coach, okay, hey, let's go coach these guys, all right, and those guys will never play.
Tyler Horka, Jackson Clarion Ledger. On the topic of beating some of the opponents in your own conference, previous coach here probably solidified his head coaching job here by beating Mississippi State, and then maybe the last 2 years that was a big reason that he's not here anymore. Could be a big reason that the head coach down there is still there, is that he won 2 weeks ago. All that said, what does it mean to you to walk into a position where you're a head coach at a university that it does mean a lot to beat one other team in this conference, Mississippi State?
Well, I think anywhere you go, you usually have rivalry games, and so I think this one maybe is a little unique, is from, the two are, both in the same conference, both in the same state. So, and obviously highly competitive in recruiting against each other because that's, the biggest reason why you win games. So, we're excited about the competition and, keeping these kids home.
Have you spoken to either Coach Saban or Coach Carroll about this situation here? What was their response to you taking this job?
I did not yet. Obviously coaches were extremely busy, and usually I a lot of times would bounce something off of Coach Carroll, but I felt so good about this situation here that I didn't. Usually I'd call him and say, hey, what do you think about it? And so I didn't, but I'm sure here very soon I'll talk to both of them.
On the topic of recruiting, questions, how confident are you that you can keep the best players in the state at Ole Miss, and how big is that? In your thing out there, you said that you can go anywhere in the country and get anybody you want, but how important are these guys here within the Magnolia State border?
Well, extremely important, and it started last night. I didn't even change clothes yet from the plane, and we got, obviously I can't talk specific kids, but, starting last night and then again 6:30 this morning with in-state kids.
Keith, a lot of times athletic directors and their big hires are kind of linked to those hires. How much did you think about that as you were going out and selecting Lane?
I think for me it was kind of exactly what I said last week at the press conference. I wanted to go find the best coach for our situation. And, certainly we're going to be linked. We talked about that. We talked about locking arms and doing this thing together. And, I even mentioned to him when we were meeting, and I still haven't signed my contract yet. So I'm going to be here a long time. I plan on being here a long time, as does he. So we talked about that, and certainly we're going to be linked. But my goal was to go out and find the best coach, and that could galvanize our fan base, be the leader of young men, and certainly at the end of the day, we want to win a lot of games.
Keith, did you sense any kind of fan momentum get behind Lane? Did you feel that at all?
Yeah, you could feel that. You could feel that a little bit for sure. And I think that when we talked, we didn't talk until the middle of the week, and I'd been talking to a few other people, and talked to him and just realized that the charisma and just kind of the energy that he had was going to be perfect for coming in here and doing the things that we needed to do.
Lane, you got the right colors on today, suit, tie, shirt, and everything. Did you have all that? Because I know everything moved fast, or did you have to go pick up something on the fly?
There's a lot of stories behind this outfit. I had some really good suits, but then I went to Alabama and I gained some weight, so those don't fit anymore. So this isn't even my suit, but this is actually Jimmy Sexton's suit, so he's lost weight, so we're kind of even now.
Take one more. Keith, was this process, becoming the new AD, getting the official tag, and knowing you had this important hire, was this process at any point stressful, knowing that how important, how did you navigate this mentally?
Sorry if my facial expression showed the answer to that. No, there was some stress to it for sure. And let me say this: this has been a hard week for Ole Miss athletics. In general, not just with football. There's been some changes we've had to make, and it's been a hard week. But certainly, kind of the tough part of this business is, after you make a change, as emotional as it is, and all those things, you've got to jump to the next step. And so, I did that, again, working with Chad and our search consultant. We were able to jump right in and get the search going. But yeah, if you're going to make a change, you got to get the next one right. And there's a lot of pressure to do that. And I couldn't be more happy with our choice, and I think we got it right.